Merci Bernardo. Bon, donc je reprends avec la présentation du cas d'étude espagnol. Je rappelle au préalable, c'était un cas d'étude qui n'était pas...
Thank you very much. We're going to continue with the Spanish case study. That was not part of the project, but we had the opportunity to work on this case, and we decided to include the Spanish case study in order to extend the approach. So this is a case study that has been done with several colleagues, Mariana Caraballo, Manuela Vieira Pac, and Pascal Rowe. This is the contents of my presentation: introduction, objectives, material and methods, results, and finally some recommendations. We have worked on how to approach social acceptability in a specific site in Andalusia. It's a specific region within Andalusia, and it is within the province of Malaga, because this is quite a large province with quite a long coastline, and we could work on a very specific area. You know the main context. We've heard before that aquaculture is somehow, or the development of aquaculture is somehow stagnant. We know that aquaculture development is in the political agenda of Spain, the European Union, and Andalusia. So these regional authorities in Andalusia recognize the failure of previous projects, and due to many different reasons, including the lack of social support or the lack of social acceptability. So we have aquaculture plans for this territory, and for that we have to assess the plans. We have to consider the size, and all these processes are quite expensive and they are not efficient in the end. That's why aquaculture development is stagnant. It's not moving forward. So in general terms, we can also say that there's a lack of consideration of the social issues, and that's why we decided to collaborate with AGAPA, which is an agency in charge of aquaculture development in the region. They also work with the primary sector, so we've built this cooperation within the framework of the MEDA project to see how we could integrate social acceptability in their plans. So let's talk about the region. This is a site of study. It's not the main aquaculture production region in Spain, but it contributes 12% to national production in terms of volume. And the previous plan envisaged several strategies to develop the sector. So there were several scenarios. The most optimistic thought about a 62% of aquaculture development. So the idea was to understand the main interactions between the aquaculture sector and the other stakeholders in the territory. Also, another objective was to assess the main factors of social acceptability, and also to test an institutional participatory protocol to boost or enhance social acceptability of aquaculture. And this within a context in which the aquaculture product has a very bad image. And also, there is a general perception that aquaculture produces a lot of environmental impact and that it competes on the use of coastal areas. Regarding methods, material methods, we've tried to use different approaches. So first, we've conducted an initial analysis, a diagnosis. The idea was to build several scenarios and then discuss with different stakeholders about these scenarios so that we could explore specific actions and sustainable projects to develop aquaculture. The second, well, the first part is a diagnosis that was based on a bibliographic review, taking into account different reports from the regional authorities and national authorities. This gave us an idea of the context. In a second phase, we prepare a working plan for this area with 3 main actions. The first action was a series of interviews, face-to-face interviews with all stakeholders, both at local and regional level. So we interviewed people from the local administration. We also conducted interviews with the different stakeholders in this area, like different institutions. We've also interviewed people from different professional organizations and fish farmers in order to be able to diagnose the situation in this area. We also included people from the tourist sector. Then we've conducted some more in-depth interviews with fishermen because they are the agents that are more in contact with the aquaculture sector. So we conducted a more thorough and in-depth interviews with them in order to understand their approach and their concerns. This is another important action. These are the training sessions for the administration so that they are aware of the social dimension. We use participatory approaches so that we could build a process that could be tested later. I'm not going to enter into the details. This is the participatory process. As you can see, we organized several workshops with the different stakeholders in order to discuss about the development of aquaculture in this area. 4 meetings were organized with AGAPA and fishers representatives. We didn't finish this process, and I will explain why later on. Regarding the results, well, this is the these are the factors of social acceptability. Aquaculture development is not just a question of social acceptability, there are also economic issues that play a very important role. We are not going to see in detail the diagnosis, but let's have a look at the social dimension. Well, it seems that there were some key factors in social acceptability. There are negative interactions between aquaculture and the other stakeholders, such as fisheries, tourism, but also local residents. We've also seen that there are conflicts that come from the lack of space for these activities. So there is competition in the use of port infrastructures or the sea. Also, environmental impact is a very important concern. And also there is the issue of social acceptability of the end product. Consumers do not accept products coming from aquaculture. This is a social acceptability regarding fishermen. Fishermen are the main stakeholders. In general terms, we can say that we may think that fishermen go against aquaculture, but this is not true, and we've seen the same idea everywhere. I mean, there isn't an opposition to aquaculture. It depends. It depends on many different factors, because it depends on the proposal for aquaculture development. When we ask whether they accept aquaculture or not, the answer is it depends. It depends on the type of aquaculture development you are proposing. We have to take into account the impact of this development. We have to take into account the marketing of the farmed fish, whether this can coexist with wild fish. I mean, they are open to discussion, but they perceive that there is a lack of transparency. They think that decisions are already taken. So there is a lack of trust, and this is a common thing in social acceptability, because trust is a key element if we want to build social acceptability. And many times we see the economic problems fishermen are facing. And social acceptability is also affected by the economic crisis. I mean, sometimes they don't think they can share the space with aquaculture. They think they have historical rights, and they feel that they are being pushed off the sea. They feel that they are trying to develop aquaculture, and then in the end they will be hired by aquaculture firms. So when we want to address the development of aquaculture, we have to think about the sustainability of fishing as well. That's why we need integrated management, and we have to consider the reality of the coastal territories and communities. Participation was not full. We had to stop the participatory process. As I mentioned, we organized some workshops, but we couldn't finish all the workshops due to many different reasons. There were some conflicts between fishermen and the administration, and these had an effect on the participatory approach. Then there were also some regional elections. There was a change in government, so we had to stop the process. Then we had the general elections in Spain that also created a lot of political instability in the country, and this had an effect on the territorial situation. And then COVID pandemic, everything stopped, and we had to put an end to this participatory approach. So we had delays, changes, and well, in the end, we could analyze the situation using the different studies that we had conducted, and we identified some failures in these institutional processes so that we can incorporate from now on the social dimension. So this, because of this complexity, we haven't been able to improve the situation. We faced political dependency of planning and instability in the region and in the country. We included the measures of the main municipalities in these participatory processes, but there were a lot of tensions between regional authorities and fishermen, which are key stakeholders in this process. So in the end, we had to simplify the participatory approach because the administrative context was very complicated. We also faced the lack of institutional framework for the consultation process. We didn't have sufficient material and human resources, so we didn't have a lot of room for maneuver because there was this control from the central administration. There was a lack of integrated approach. I mean, we tried to speak with fishermen, with aquaculturists, but there wasn't any integrated approach. And planning is very much focused on technical matters. Now let's have a look at the general recommendations. It is very important that these participatory processes are totally independent and that are supported by discussions on the territory, and then there is no interference from outside. It is also important to have sufficient resources competent personnel so that these participatory approaches can work. Expertise is also needed. It is essential to work on integrated management approaches because up to now, the sector is managed from a very technical point of view. We could also say that the time dimension is also important. We need more time. We need long-term approaches. We cannot plan and discuss in a very short period of time. We cannot reach agreements in a short period of time. And also, planning should be based on a social process and not the other way around. Sometimes we set up a plan, we set out the objectives, and then we discuss with the stakeholders, and then things are not accepted because we need trust, we need transparency. Otherwise, stakeholders feel that decisions have already been taken without considering their feedback. So planning should be built after the social process. So from the very beginning, all stakeholders should be involved in this planning process. And finally, we have to involve all stakeholders, as I've said. We have to avoid contradiction between participatory approach and predefined policy objectives. So this may lead to some tensions. We need political will. We have to open the discussion to all stakeholders, but at the same time, the decision-making process may be difficult. Well, this is all I wanted to say. Thank you very much for your attention.